hey everybody, and welcome to episode 29 of the Pixar Post Podcast. As usual, I'm TJ.
And I'm Julie.
And in this episode, we have the continuation of our Pixar Pipeline Project, where we're going to be talking to an individual from Pixar's art department. We're going to be chatting about Inside Out, as well as Lava, the short that will be playing ahead of Inside Out in theaters. We've had quite a bit of news about that over the last few weeks. And then we're going to get started just by a quick little snippet about the Pixar Post Book Club discussion. So we wanted to talk about, for the book club, we had our full period where we talked about Creativity Inc. Ed Catmull's book. We did the live Google Hangout discussion, and we learned some things from it. It was our first book club discussion, so we've retooled a few things. Nothing major by any means, but we're going to put a little bit more of a centralized focus on the forum aspect of it. And then also when we get to the forum discussion, we're going to do a little bit more background as far as getting some others to chat with us on the Hangout as well, just to enrich the experience a little bit more. So the book that we're going to be reading, unfortunately, we haven't announced it yet while we were just doing we haven't officially announced it on the forum. We announced it on the last podcast, but we're going to be reading the Pixar Touch. We decided that last month as well. We're going to read that for 1 month, so at the end of July, we're going to reconvene and we're going to talk about the Pixar Touch. Throughout the month, though, be sure to head to the forum, look at the current book that we're reading. That's going to be, again, Pixar Touch, and go ahead and chat along throughout the month. And then if you're interested in chatting with us live on the Google Hangout, at any point throughout the month, either send us a message through our email, which is just, of course, at usual at info@pixarpost.com, or you can chat about it on the forum. Just say, hey, I want to chat about this with you as well live. And if you want to see any of our other videos, just go to our YouTube channel, which is, of course, youtube.com/the Pixar Post. And you can see our videos that we have on there that we talked about for Creativity Inc., as well as a little secondary Google Hangout that we did where we discussed some news that was out for Inside Out after the Annecy International Film Festival.
That was a mouthful.
Yes. So the first big news that we wanted to get into before we start talking about our great interview with Craig Foster as part of the art department for Pixar, which will tell you how you'll know him very clearly.
Yes, we're excited about this one.
Yes.
But not that we're never excited about any of them.
That's true. Yeah, they're all great.
Yeah, but this one was kind of special for us.
Well, it took us by surprise.
Yes.
So anyways, we're going to talk about Lava first, though, because this was some big news that we got in the last couple weeks was about Lava and obviously Inside Out.
Yeah, this was huge news.
Yeah. So explain when we saw the news come in.
It was like, 12:05?
Mm-hmm. Midnight our time.
Yes, because we're Eastern Standard Time, and all of a sudden it was like, boop, you get an email. And I was like, oh my goodness.
Right. We happened to actually be watching some of the Harry Potter.
Yeah, because we were watching all of the videos from the Harry Potter press event for Diagon Alley, and we're just like, geeking out over that.
At Universal Studios.
Yeah.
And so we're watching all those, getting all excited, and all of a sudden, in the middle of the video, about 5 minutes in, where they're doing like a tour of Diagon Alley, all of a sudden, bling, like you said, we get the email. We just slam the space bar on YouTube. We start going. We're like,
we have dueling computers on.
Yep, Julie's got her computer going, talking about it on the forum. I've got mine working on some graphics.
We have a desktop, a laptop, an iPad going. We're just trying to get all of the news out there.
Right, you're monitoring Twitter while I'm writing up stuff too.
Yeah.
So it was really exciting. You did say it felt great that there was.
I love this feeling. I love this feeling of like, oh my goodness, there's so much news. Let's tell everybody.
And the other thing is it was such unexpected news about Lava.
Right.
I mean, there was an early rumor about it because somebody had it listed on their LinkedIn profile page that was an employee at Pixar.
Which a lot of people had been speculating on our forum.
Right. So there was a couple different people that had talked about it, but we never heard anything else about it, what the story was going to be about or anything like that. So or
if that was like a code name for something.
Right, yeah, because the names change quite often and all those kind of things. So what we learned is that the official synopsis is that it's inspired by the isolated beauty of tropical islands and the explosive allure of ocean volcanoes. Lava is a musical love story that takes place over millions of years. From Pixar Animation Studios, director James Ford Murphy and producer Andrea Warren, Lava opens in theaters on June 19th, 2015, in front of Inside Out. So, obviously the first thing that comes to my mind when I hear that it's a musical love story is the blue umbrella.
Right.
I'm not saying that this is going to be anything like a copy or anything like that, because it certainly sounds like it's worlds different being in a tropical island and about volcanoes, where you're talking about the city and umbrellas with rain. But it seems to be a trend among shorts. I mean, we had the blue umbrella, Paperman. It's all kind of clumped together. It's almost like these ideas of a love story kind of told over a musical accompaniment kind of came about at the same time.
Yeah, I'm enjoying it. I like it. It's kind of different. It's kind of new. I like where it's going. And in like a year or two, it's going to change again.
Well, of course. Yeah, I think it kind of works.
I like the progression, the ups and downs of like where it's going to go. There's music, and then there's speaking, and then there's goofiness.
Right. Well, you say there's speaking. Is there going to be speaking?
Oh, no, I'm not talking about for lava. I'm just talking about for different shorts.
Different shorts.
Yeah.
Right, absolutely. Absolutely. So what did you think about the poster?
I love it.
Okay, what do you love about it?
I just think it's beautiful. I like the little vintage feel. It's very, obviously, for, a tropical island, it's very Hawaiian looking, very Polynesian. I think it's gorgeous. The animals are paired up. The sea animals, the sea life, are all paired up with partners. I do think the name lava, I think the volcano is in love with the lava. I don't think it's another volcano in love with another volcano. I don't think it's two volcanoes. I think it's the volcano in love with the lava, and the lava comes and goes. That's why it's never like, hey, where are you going? I think the lava, because it turns, it hardens. I think that's the...
Interesting.
I'm just saying that's
interesting
that's
thought.
What I think it is.
Yeah, and obviously you're saying that because, again, like you said, the poster shows, for instance, it shows the volcano in the background, one volcano, and then everything else among it. There's like dolphins and sea turtles and all those other things are paired.
And the volcano will be paired with lava, but the lava doesn't stay forever.
That's interesting.
The lava stays for like a couple minutes.
Well, it's a story that's told over millions of years, so that's going to be an interesting thing how they're going to talk about that.
But think
as
about
well.
it, volcano it stays with the volcano. The lava stays with I just think that's what I'm thinking it is.
Okay, yeah. As far as the poster as well, the other thing that I kind of took away from it by looking at it is it reflects, so for people that haven't necessarily seen it, of course you can always go to our show notes, pixarpost.com. Click on the podcast button, and this is, again, episode 29. We'll have a link to the lava discussion in there. But what it reminded me of is some of the more popular screen prints that have been done recently. It very easily could transition to be a screen print like what Tom Whalen has done for The Incredibles, Finding Nemo, Toy Story, Monsters Inc.
Yeah, like the Mondo posters that are very popular. Yes, it does kind of resemble that screen print look.
Right, by having that retro-y feel. Yeah, so I thought that was kind of cool that they had done that as well. And, revealing it was just...
We were so excited. We're like, oh, the poster!
Right, yeah, exactly. That we didn't just get the news, that we got the poster as well right off the bat. So again, it's directed by James Ford Murphy. For people that may not know who he is, I can't say that he was front of mind as far as in the lexicon of Pixar and who you commonly think of. So it's great to hear of another one of these people, especially because he has been there since 1998 on A Bug's Life. Right, he was a character designer and animator. He moved through other roles from supervising animator, directing animator, and so on. So that was a cool thing. Hearing that this is a musical as well, the other question that had come up that we didn't know off the bat was who would be composing or recording the song. So we had posted that originally, and then for some of the individual press companies that were in attendance at the Directors Guild of America, is that what it was?
In Los Angeles.
The Directors Guild of America in Los Angeles, they had a screening of the full Lava short, as well as the beginning introduction like they had for the Annecy International Film Festival of Inside Out.
First 5 minutes, I believe.
Right. So they saw Lava there, and one of the things that was revealed is that the director, again, James Ford Murphy, we'll just say James, he came out, and when he was introducing Lava, he started playing on ukulele the song that he had written. So we found out he mentioned that he had taken that inspiration and channeling some of that emotion of what people think of where you think of the song Somewhere Over the Rainbow, and I'm going to just totally demolish the pronunciation of this Hawaiian artist name. It's Israel Kamaka Wiwo Ole. I'm going to go with that. And his version of Somewhere Over the Rainbow. And it's a beautiful song. It has a lot of heart and emotion to it and passion. And for the vocal element of the song, James has pulled in two more, like Israel, traditional and well-respected Hawaiian vocalists to handle that portion. So that'll be really great to hear that.
It's going to be beautiful.
Yeah, it certainly seems like it's going to be another one of those ones that's going to really take you into it from the musical standpoint, and then
kind of have you swaying, and
I envision that too.
Yeah, just and with like a smile, just like very happy and carefree almost.
Mm-hmm. Right, and we also learned that it's going to be produced by Andrea Warren, who started on A Bug's Life as an art department production assistant before she essentially took on the role of production manager for Wall-E and Brave. So certainly another seasoned veteran within Pixar's gates.
Right. I think it's interesting that both the director and the producer both came to Pixar during Bug's Life.
Yeah, it is interesting to
I think that's kind of neat.
Yeah. Yeah, I wonder if they've ever crossed paths on any of their other projects and worked on something prior to this, or if they were paired up and
I don't know.
I mean, went into it.
Since they both started on A Bug's Life as their first project, but they might have come in during different years because of how long it takes.
Oh, that's true.
So it's kind of interesting.
Yeah, it just said it started on A Bug's Life for Andrea Warren. We don't know exactly, was that 98?
Where she came in on it, or where he came in on it.
Yeah.
It's neat. I just like that,
that is interesting
between them.
That is interesting. So that's what we've learned from Lava. So pairing up with that from the kind of talking about both elements. Again, we mentioned the Directors or the Actors Guild of America. Was it Directors or Actors? Directors Guild of America. And then also with the Annecy International Film Festival, we've learned a lot more about Inside Out. The discussion that we're going to talk about here, obviously if we're talking about a movie that hasn't come out yet, could be considered spoilery. So in the show notes, we'll mention where you can pick up specifically, again, if you want to go right to where the interview that we're going to do with Craig Foster is going to pick up as part of the Pipeline Project. But over the last few weeks, we've obviously learned a lot more. But today, we were surprised, and today is June 30th, we were surprised that we had heard a little bit of news that Victor Navone, who has been known as an animator at Pixar for many years. He's worked on anything from Monsters, Inc. to The Incredibles to Brave. He's been a co-director of Tokyo Mater, as well as some of the other Mater's Tall Tales shorts, 3 of those. We learned that he is going to be the supervising animator on Inside Out. So there's another role that we know about at this point.
Right.
Very interesting, and certainly from his history at Pixar, certainly well received. At least from our minds. I mean, his work is fantastic. So
for sure.
We're excited to see what he's going to do in that role.
He has a lot of work that's in the art of books, doesn't he?
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah, lots of great examples in there. So as far as one of the other pieces that we had saw this week, or within the last 2 weeks, was about a D23 article that highlighted a new piece of concept art. And the concept art, this official tagline said... Riley's emotions, it shows how Riley's emotions guide her. You can see Joy operating a control panel that accesses Riley's memories and real-time interactions throughout her day. It's called Headquarters. The film will switch back and forth from the inside perspective of her emotions and what it looks like when Riley acts them out. The juxtaposition of this is hilarious and heartwarming. So if you haven't seen this, certainly, again, go to the show notes. We'll have a link to our article there where that is shown. But again, it shows a very small rendition of Joy control at the control panel, and then there's almost like a pill-shaped window, which would be looking out of Riley's mind, and you can see another young woman ice skating, or at least we know that because a couple of our readers have since responded and said they saw that concept art at D23 Expo last year. And it's really her interaction with that other young lady while they're skating. So I thought that was a really cool, another little teeny piece that we got to see.
Yeah. I mean, now I feel like is when the concept art is going to be, released, where we're going to start getting more little snippets, just more little, maybe like those quick clips for the internet, just like Monsters University did.
Right. Yeah, and we're a year out. We saw that picture as part of the, was that at Annecy or was that at the Directors Guild, where Pete Docter was holding up the drawing of Joy and said 1 year.
That was at the Directors Guild.
Right.
That was, I mean, it technically was on the 19th, but they released it at midnight, so it was technically the 20th.
Well, midnight our time, but it was their time
so
the
it's
19th.
Still the 19th.
Yeah, but so it was 1 year. So that's about when we started really picking up the pace with Monsters University stuff. So it'll be great to see more of this.
Right.
And obviously what everybody's talking about is when we're going to catch this trailer.
I know.
Everybody keeps talking about the trailer. When are we going to see this trailer? And it's funny, the Maleficent was something that people talked about.
Oh, that was a rumor. That was a big rumor for a while.
Right. They're talking about Planes, Fire and Rescue. We're talking about Big Hero 6 in
next
November.
Week, though.
Is it?
That's this Friday.
Oh, really? Mm-hmm. For the Planes one? Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's interesting. I just don't know when it's going to show up. Nobody has really come up with anything, but that is probably like the hottest topic that people are talking about. They want to see this trailer. They want to see some of the footage. That's one of the most,
like, when people contact us, it's like, when's this trailer coming out? It's like, oh my goodness.
We get mentions on Twitter about that. Somebody sent us emails.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and every time we're like, we pretty much know what you know at this point. Yeah.
Sorry, guys.
So... one of the other things that had come about from this discussion was an article on Empire Online, who was lucky enough to have a sit-down with Jonas Rivera, the producer of Inside Out, as well as Pete Docter, of course, the director, at that Directors Guild event. And I'm just going to read the quote that they mentioned from here, because some of the elements that were discussed, and again, spoilery, if you're avoiding, are just so amazing. So it says, with the movie now a year away, which Rivera joked would skip by in a minute because animated film schedules go by like dog years, the animation is roughly 50% complete, but already looks very different to other Pixar films. Docter said that he's pushed the various teams to channel classic Tex Avery and other tunes to employ more of a colorfully cartoonish environment than previous work at Pixar. The result, even in its rough state, is fascinating, funky, funny, is a fascinating, funky, funny guess at what the mind might look like, or as Docter put it, an Apple Store crossed with It's a Small World. So first off, I'm all about the whole Tex Avery squash and stretch. You're getting back to like Looney Tunes kind of days.
It's exactly what I was thinking.
Yeah, that's fantastic.
Right. That
is absolutely fantastic. And the fact that these worlds that they're going into are, an Apple Store crossed with It's a Small World. So you can visualize, I visualize like the cleanliness and orderliness of an Apple Store, but yet the clean lines and throwback nature, if you will, to the artwork of It's a Small World, with the bright colors,
I was going to say
defined
all the
lines.
colors.
Right. Yeah, I think that's going to make this movie just absolutely stand out on the screen, and everybody
even
talks
the characters themselves, the 5 emotions. Look at them.
Right, with the colors.
They're bright. They have a hue to them.
Right. So one of the things that's discussed as well is about the characters, and I think it's absolutely awesome. So you talked about like the characters and kind of some of the throwback stuff. The characters themselves, and Pete Docter had talked about this previously, about how he pushed some of the departments from a technical standpoint to do something they've never done. And that was about the characters and how they're almost like a clear shell, if you will. So think of Joy, if you've seen her, and think of her outer skin just being a clear outline. Like she's almost like a glass globe, like the emotions are held in. But inside of her are millions of little particles of color, which make up her shape. So it's really kind of interesting to think like, it's just like almost like an outer shell, and then those emotions all live in tiny little orbs inside of her, which then those orbs get put into memories, which then get sorted to long-term, short-term. Yeah, and I thought it was really interesting to think about, too. They talked about the orbs have different brightnesses based on the intensity of the memory. So I wonder if throughout the movie, as characters kind of come and go and fade, we know that joy and disgust get lost in the mind. Mm-hmm. Are they going, or joy
and sadness,
right? So as they get lost and travel throughout some of the other various lands, are they going to fade a little bit because they're not as prevalent during that time in color and intensity?
Maybe. It's actually a really good thought. Do they physically, or do like the happy and sad memories go away? And then Riley's just left being like anger and disgust.
Well, that's what she's going to be left with just those things. But I wanted to know if they're not as intense, since they're lost, are they going to be like, Joy is yellow. Is she going to be a more muted tone of yellow when she's lost than when she's active in headquarters?
Interesting. Because
the memories may not be as prevalent, or her feeling of emotion may not be as prevalent while she's lost.
I like that idea.
Just something to think about.
That's interesting. It's almost kind of like the Tinkerbell thing. When Tinkerbell fades, and you know what I mean?
Yeah, some of the other articles out there had mentioned that there's a little bit of a...
It's just a touch. The same kind of idea.
Right. So there's another article from comingsoon.net where we also heard some amazing descriptions and additional details on some of the concept art, so I'm going to read that as well. Some of them included an image of long-term memory, a sprawling field of little spheres stretching out in all directions. There, too, are forgetters, little blue avocado-shaped creatures that are in charge of deciding which memories need to be discarded. At one point in their journey, Joy and Sadness visit Imagination Land, in quotes. Joy is disinherited to see that attractions like a fairy tale castle, which have fallen to disarray, are being torn down in place of new lands like the imaginary boyfriend generator and the swear word library. Another piece of concept art offered a look at where dreams are made, a movie studio poster with attractions on the outside of the wall with titles like You're falling into a hole, complete with Saul Bass inspired design. So that's really cool to think about how as your emotions change, the fairy tale castles and lands are physically breaking down and becoming disarray. Like they're getting all...
Yes.
Yeah, they're like a building in blight, where it's just...
Yeah, to me, that is genius right there.
It's totally genius.
It's genius writing, and that is just... To me, that's like Pete Docter looking at his daughter and just thinking, what is going on in the mind of my daughter as she's growing up? And I think I feel like he just took notes. Mm-hmm. And was just like, oh, I think, because Pete's mind works in like crazy ways. I mean, he is such an amazing writer, thinker. Visionary. Perfect. And I just feel like this movie has been in the making since his daughter was probably born. You know what I mean? Like, since that first week, I think he just thought of like all these little things. And her second birthday, it's like, okay, it's like
watching the emotions
it's
ponies
change. And Disney. And the 6th birthday, it's princesses and everything's magic. 13th birthday, it's like, it's like friends and music and maybe a boy band.
Right.
It's like things just change.
Just seeing that
scene that they just described on Coming Soon is incredible. That has me really excited for this film.
I know. It's just going to be ridiculous. And
I think it's because we, like everyone, from hearing that, we can all take a peek back into our childhood and be like, what was that one thing? It might not have been a castle. It might have been like, my favorite bunny stuffed just things.
That absolutely. I think we can all
world to you, or that used to your imaginary friend. Anything, and just like how it changed. Like, okay, when you were 16, what was it? It's like, I just wanted a car. Right. I just wanted to go get a Frosty with my friends. Right. Just like silly stuff like that. How everything changed, and then
So what'll be interesting, though, is how will this movie be perceived by somebody that's in that phase of their life right now?
Yes.
Or somebody that's about to enter that phase. Because we're going to be thinking about it from a nostalgic standpoint.
Right.
But what's cool is that the audience reaction is going to be totally different depending on what stage of your life you're currently in.
But also as a nostalgic thing, we think that this is going to be kind of like that Looney Tunes feel with the squash and stretch.
Mm-hmm.
That's very nostalgic for us, but for our niece and nephews,
there's not as much of that.
They haven't grown up with this Looney Tunes, and they're still in this phase where, princess castles are still good, but then some of them aren't, where they're getting into that preteen.
Right. It's going to be really interesting to see how it's perceived.
Awesome. It's really cool for this previous generation, two previous from us, because we're in our 30s, so we can look back and be like, oh gosh, this is so awesome to look back on, but there's
and we're obviously thinking about it as parents now ourselves and those kind of things.
Now that we're parents,
there's so many layers that your mind can go into this movie, which is what's going to make it one of those ones that's really going to stick in your mind.
Oh, and
so many different minds and inside discussions.
From what everyone said about the first 5 minutes when they talk about, Riley being born.
And how she's experiencing things with the emotions. You're basically seeing Riley being born and the birth of the 5 main emotional characters.
Right, and how she connects
the first time.
Yeah, and how she connects to, her father, I believe it was.
Right.
Oh my gosh, reading these, I was seriously getting tears. I think it's only because we have a son now, and I'm just like, oh my gosh, he has these emotions, and he loves us, and he smiles at us in the morning. I'm like, oh my goodness, he has these. Mm-hmm. So seeing this movie, I'm so excited. You have no, hearing that.
I know.
And of course, seeing how things change, when they get older. It's just going to be so exciting.
Right. Yeah. And obviously, we talked about as well, one of the things that we're going to think about is we haven't fed him broccoli yet, our son broccoli yet, but they talk about in the description of the first 5 minutes that, the first time that Riley experiences broccoli, disgust is no, we're done, not interested. But it's going to be interesting because now when we feed him broccoli, I'm going to think of this. It's going to be crazy. So,
isn't that crazy? That's nuts. You're going to think about this movie.
Right. Yeah. So one of the things that has been discussed, and thanks to Dan, the Pixar fan, for commenting on the forum about this, is, and it's not just on our forum, it's been across the board, but we've tried to call a lot of the different sources on our forum about the comparisons of Inside Out to other projects. Everybody says, wow, this sounds super creative, but it reminds me of X.
Yeah.
So
it reminds me of Y.
Right. So what we did is we tried to call those different sources that people are talking about. And let's get an easy one out of the way first. Some people have mentioned Body Wars at Disney. And that one really it's flying through the body in a mini spaceship to see how our immune system works. Not really about controlling the emotions. It's more about an educational, here's how we're going to attack, what are the white blood cells doing and all that kind of stuff. So That one I'm just knocking right out. No comparison in my mind. And most people didn't have a strong comparison to that. They just said, hey, it reminded me because you're going inside the body. Mm-hmm. So the second one is probably the closest, if you will, to Inside Out. But I still think there's going to be some pretty drastic differences. And this one is Herman's Head. So let's just listen to the intro from the very first episode of Herman's Head so that way you can get a glimpse of what people know when they think of this show.
This is Herman Brooks. Herman is just like the rest of us. Every day he has to make all kinds of decisions. Like what to wear, whom to date, and when to panic. Now, these decisions should be easy, but if you take a look inside Herman's head, you'll see why he sometimes has trouble making up his mind.
I'm Herman's intellect. Without me, he couldn't hold his job, pay his rent, or tie his shoes.
I'm Herman's sensitivity. Without me, he wouldn't feel tenderness, honesty, or love. The good things in life.
Oh, I'm Herman's anxiety, and I keep him out of trouble. And believe me, there's trouble everywhere.
I'm Herman's lust. Without me, he'd miss out on all the good stuff. Fun, food, babes.
Sometimes they agree. Usually they don't. But this struggle is going on inside all of us. And it's all going on inside Herman's head.
All right, so the problem that I have with the comparison to this show, which is a 1991 show, so that's why the music was so awesome.
Yeah.
Is that, like every other thing that we're going to talk about from here after, it has an overtly sexual undertone. The show had a sexual undertone. Obviously, that's where that, hey, I'm the bad guy. That's like, all the good stuff in life. I just think it's a little too stereotypical, too common, and I don't think it allows for a very in-depth look inside emotions. It's more like, here's everything that's right on the surface, let's just talk about this, and let's just go with it. So you've got the nerdy guy with the bow tie that's like, I'm his anxiety. It's just like, okay, there's nothing to me that's about like this that's depth. But if we're talking about what we've already discussed with Inside Out, about imaginary lands crumbling and going around, these are real things that have heart to them, that are going to endear people to the movie and make them feel something.
Right.
This show is a comedy show. It's about like, hey, let's have a good time.
It's a sitcom.
It's a sitcom, and that's what it is. So I'm not saying there's anything wrong with that, but I'm saying that I can't get the connection to Inside Out. So
I can see snippets of it where you could be like, okay, I understand that it kind of mirrors it a tad.
Right. And they go inside the mind.
Right.
Like, and they work in a headquarters. There's characters. They all kind of have to work together and battle together to agree. Like they say, like, sometimes they all agree, but most of the time they don't. And obviously that's where the show works, because obviously you have all these battling storylines and fast-talking action. But I just don't think that the heart is there, and that's where the disconnect is for me.
Right.
But yes, the idea that it's inside the mind.
The idea is...
Right. And as far as like anybody thinking like, hey, this might be like, it sounds like this or whatever, the story has been done a million times to go inside the mind. There was, in fact, another example that we found from 1943. It's a cartoon called Reason and Emotion, where it's narrated by an outside voice and talks about how we think and feel, basically saying that when we're born, we only have emotion, and then we have to learn to balance that emotion by painting in reason. And again, it has, of course, the overly sexual undertone, which paints men as interested in one thing. And obviously, a little bit of this isn't too surprising, that it's a little bit more stereotypical coming from 1943. Those roles were pretty much
different.
They were different then. But again, Reason and Emotion, same kind of deal. It had characters inside the person's mind that was controlling what happened. And then as they controlled what happened, you got to see what happened to the human that they were controlling. To the vessel. You got to see what happened to them as they made these emotional decisions. Or reason-type decisions. How they, more thoughtful. So the other one that was discussed was Cranium Command, and it's a retired ride from Epcot's Wonder of Life Pavilion, which goes into the mind of a 12-year-old boy. So again, we're getting close to the age range. This is a 12-year-old boy. Riley's a 11-year-old girl?
I believe so.
So it's really a breakdown of the left and right brain, the heart, stomach, adrenaline, etc. So it's really the parts of the body more so than the emotions. Even though emotions kind of come into play when you're talking about the heart, because although it's a body part, it
focuses on like people working on those body parts within the brain.
Right. So what I thought was most interesting about this is, what did you think about Cranium Command?
I mean, I know a lot of people really like this ride. I mean, for just like we said, for like nostalgia reasons, I never liked it.
Yeah, it is funny because we watched, and thanks to Ultimate iPad Expert in the forum, that's his forum username, for posting the video. He posted it in our discussion that we were all going through about this. And the comments on the YouTube video were all, oh my gosh, they have to bring this back. I love it. I think they're watching it from the nostalgic standpoint, like you said, because it was painful. I had personally never seen it in person, and I'm obviously watching it from a 2014 perspective. I didn't really grasp it as far as, and again, I guess I just also, in thinking about all these things, of course it goes right into, it's a 12-year-old boy, right into his lab partner in class. He's like, oh,
cute, yeah.
Right. It goes right to that sexual that undertone. I know it's 12-year-old boy, he's not thinking about sexual, but it's that same kind of thing of the boy for the girl and how the mind and emotion and body parts react to that. That's where Inside Out is going to blow this out of the water. They're going to get deep. They're going to get a heartfelt reaction. It's going to be inside of a girl, so it's not going to be this stereotypical, here's the mind of a guy. And I guess, I mean, I hate to say this because it is kind of like a man-woman kind of thing, but stereotypically, if you're writing about a man, it's going to be more basic because they're going to throw to those...
But with girls, I mean, girls, we throw tantrums, not tantrums, but we can get kind of... a little fussy or...
Well, there's more of a throw to emotions.
Right.
Whereas it's going to be more of a physical aspect that they're going to throw more in.
Especially when you're talking about, like, preteen girls. It's like...
Right. I love the fact that it's preteen as well, so they're taking out the sexual element. Mm-hmm. They're just taking that right out. They don't have to worry about this. It's going to be about the story. It's not going to be about her, I'm assuming, swooning over some guy, which is going to be fantastic. I hope it doesn't turn into that. If it does, I mean, obviously... From what we've seen, it still sounds absolutely enthralling. I just don't see that it's going to go that way.
Right.
What do you think?
I don't think it's going to go that way. I mean, if anything, there might be, that crush.
Sure. To build that, the imaginary boyfriend generator, I can see there's going to be an element of that. I just hope it doesn't become the focus, and I don't think it will.
No, I don't think it'll become the focus, because I think the focus is on those other emotions.
Exactly. Well, and it's not about her as the main character.
Right.
The emotions are the main characters. She's the vessel.
Right, but I think that Riley, as the vessel, will have more interactions probably with maybe her friends, that friend that she was like ice skating with, or her family, without joy and sadness in the headquarters, and only the other three emotions left, with her kind of being fussy and persnickety kind of to those people around her. Right. And then kind of having to make up for those emotions towards the end. Right. That's how I think it's going to go.
Absolutely, and I totally agree. So that's good, lively discussion on Inside Out. Thanks again to Dan for bringing that up in the forum. Obviously, it was discussed elsewhere too, but thanks for putting that out there so we could call it and kind of have all those different sources. So if you want to read or see those videos that are out there, they're all posted within our forum under Inside Out, under the feature film section. So the next thing that we want to get into, we're excited obviously to talk about the Pixar Pipeline Project, the next interview in the series. This is number 3 of 9. This is our interview with Craig Foster from the art department. And just to refresh again, month 1 we talked with Louis Gonzalez from Story, then we talked with Chloe Klosman from the editing department, and obviously, like I mentioned, we're talking with Craig. The art department plays a great role in bringing so many of the background elements, as well as elements that the characters interact with, to life. Craig and I talk about a little bit about, like for instance, in Monsters University, or in Party Central even, the Blort can that they drink their drink from.
Like the soda can.
Like the soda can that they drink it from. He talked about designing that, how it's a flat subject and then they have to wrap it around the can. There's so many more things to it. He talks about WALL-E and how all those motion graphics as WALL-E's, going through the town, all those motion graphics that are on those screens that pop up, that's all art department. So it's really great to see.
Including stuff in theme parks.
Yeah, it's really great to see all the different areas that the art department touches, and it just seems like, wow, what a blast, what a ride, and you better keep your head on if you're working in this department. It just sounds like...
Seems like you're busy all the time.
Yeah, it sounds great, though. I mean, just absolutely fantastic to get involved with so many different aspects. Mm-hmm. It definitely seems so much more varied, or so varied as opposed to some other elements could be.
Right. It's so funny as we, continue this pipeline project. You've always been fascinated with animation and drawing and the lighting aspect of it. Mm-hmm. And I feel like, and editing, you've liked editing. I feel like as this has progressed, you've wanted to be like, you're like, okay, well, yeah, I like story. I could do that.
Well, that was you.
Well, yeah, I'm definitely a story person. And then editing, you're like, oh, I could be in the editing department tomorrow. And like,
I never said that.
No, but and now we're in like the art department, and you're just like, oh, maybe it's the art department that I'd like to.
I know.
You are just fascinated with every single aspect.
Well, it's what it is. It's the creation. It's the fact that there is so much heart, there's so much depth to what they do in all these different departments that when we're talking to these people, you feel the passion rubs off, and you get excited about it.
Right.
So I think that that's what it is. Oh, the other thing I wanted to talk about with the art department does that I didn't really think about before is, those are some of like the background elements or, environmental objects. But one of the things too was even like in Cars 2, Miguel Camino, you think of him as being that the racer that was like the yellow, orange, red color and his designs. So they actually helped like create like the wrap or the paint job that would go on his car for some of the World Grand Prix racers. So you got to think about that too. There's so many different things that they work on.
All those decals on the cars.
Yeah, the decals on the cars, all that kind of stuff.
The stickers on Lightning McQueen or the stickers on Chick Hicks.
Right. It's absolutely amazing, all the different areas that they touch. So don't just think, when you're thinking about the art department, don't just think it's small individual things. I mean, it's major stuff that you're experiencing and interacting with throughout the movie. And even in books, and even in theme parks and everything else. So, well, anyways, let's just skip right to it. We'll catch back up with our interview with Craig Foster on the opposite side, but here's our interview that we had with Craig. So today we are joined by Craig Foster, who is part of the art department at Pixar. So welcome, Craig.
Hello.
So, well, the first thing I want to talk about as part of the Pipeline series, the art department is the next round 3, if you will, of our discussions. So fill us in just at a high level of the art department at Pixar. What does an average day in the life look like for someone that works in that department?
Well, for someone like me that does graphics, I go in and we have the ability to look at the renders from the previous day's shots that they're working on. So I go through those and see how graphics are showing up. If any graphics are missing, just how things are looking within the shot. And then I meet with art directors, meet with production designer, talk about, what I'm going to be doing. And I go in and I just start creating things based on the story and making sure that, they end up where they're supposed to go. Like if a soda can, like in Monsters University, is the Blort can.
Yep.
Soda.
Yep.
Make sure it's on the can properly and you can read it, and just things like that. I just kind of keep track of graphics.
Okay, so you're keeping track of them all, and then the creation of them as well, like you were talking about, determining how things should look.
Yep. We go through the script. We have kickoffs where they go through what the scene's going to be, what they're expecting to see within it, the mood, the action, and that. And if there's any gags or posters that, help out with the story, do sketches, show them to the production designer and various people to make sure that, it's fitting within the story. Then I go in and make those and make sure that they fit on the models and show up properly, like I was talking about with the looking at the tableaus. And it's mostly just, creating things that fit within the world. Kind of nice with graphics because there is a visual language that everyone expects, like when we're making a cereal box or, a control panel, like in WALL-E,
Sure.
User interfaces, things people expect to see. So we have a good starting point, and then just making it that legitimizing the prop within the film with, it looks like something that could exist and you recognize and you're familiar with, yet it fits in the world of monsters with the door tech, with the
right.
Scream energy canisters or anything like that. Even though a device like that doesn't exist in the real world, we put graphics on them that you recognize, so you'd think, oh, that's a machine, and I could probably operate that. I see the buttons and the levers and different icons, and it just makes things seem real.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so we just create, I based on all that, a graphics language for the environment we're working in, and try to stick with it so it stays consistent. And that's where it gets into the the design part.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
So when are you typically brought into the process for a film? Like, for instance, on Monsters University, we heard you got involved pretty early.
Yeah.
So how does the art department's work differ depending on when you get brought into a film, and when you're brought in so early, when they're still working through some of the other pieces as far as the writing and storyboarding? What are you designing at that point versus what a typical process would be?
Well, it's interesting. We're trying to figure that out. We're always kind of trying to come up with the best way to work within the films.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's kind of organic process with that is like something like, I think on Up, I came in pretty late in the film, and everything was pretty much figured out, the story, the sets. And so I was able to just start designing based on what I saw.
Okay.
But it was a reactive way of designing because you already have everything. Like you have the dirigibles already there, so I'm putting stuff on it.
Mm-hmm.
As opposed to on Monsters, when I wanted to come in early, so you're listening to the story as it evolves, and you're actually kind of immersing yourself in it. So it was a little different process. So I did a lot of sketching and designing before we actually even had the sets. So once it happened, once we were in production, I knew what the look was going to be, and I could create kind of on the fly as opposed to waiting for things to come my way and then
Sure.
just really hurriedly making assets.
Okay. Yep.
Yeah, it just kind of depends on how the schedule of the film works and how how much graphics they need, I guess, would be the answer on that.
Okay. Well, I guess obviously you have to think about, what's needed as well.
Yeah. Say like on something like WALL-E, there were a lot of graphics people involved because there's so much motion graphics and stuff, and it took a lot of effort, a lot of time to populate that whole world and all of the axiom and everything. So we.
Oh yeah, I didn't even think about that because that whole world is basically like an advertising haven with the cups and the Yeah. Would you say that was one of the larger challenges that you had, or what was a trickier project that you were involved with?
Well, I think WALL-E was challenging just because it was the future. We were creating a language, a whole new operating system, and a visual language that was dictated by B&L, like this world that had its own advertising nomenclature and look.
Mm-hmm.
But as far as magnitude of graphics, it's the Cars films, especially the last one, Cars 2, with all around the world.
Oh yeah, absolutely, because you have to create a different look for each of the different races and all those types of things.
Yeah, and all the sponsors and that, the different race leagues, which is really fun, but it's nice that that's real world. It's happening right now, so we have a lot to draw upon, as opposed to something like WALL-E, where it's just, wow, what's the axiom?
Right, exactly. Yeah. So back to the process on Monsters U. For our listeners who may not know, you were credited with creating the Arts Dream Journal in Monsters University. Now, obviously, we thought it was so hilarious that we wanted to recreate it from an early teaser that we had seen at the charity press event with Dan Scanlon in Michigan. We had him sign a copy with the expectation. We told him, hey, we're going to give this away on our site, and our readers went bonkers for it. I mean, we had I don't even know how many entries, but it was a lot, and one of our listeners, Christian, got it. So we thought it was so hilarious. The visual of that, when you see it in the movie, is when people really hit. I mean, the joke of him saying, I made you a dream journal is funny, but when you physically see the goofiness of the rearing unicorn jumping through a rainbow among the clouds, and then it has their name with puffy paint and all that kind of stuff. So with your involvement in that, and you were talking about being involved early and doing a lot of sketching, was that something that you created, or how did that process for the Dream Journal come about?
Well, we made a bunch of them, all different types, where Art might have went in and did like scrapbooking, where he had feathers and like little jewels and things like that.
Yeah.
And a version that was more like bedazzled, where you went in and just tried to make things fancy and self-binding, and the ones where you tied them with yarn or did macaroni art on the cover.
Sure.
But what we kind of settled in on was the Trapper Keepers of that time period, with
Absolutely.
the unicorns and just that look of those Trapper Keepers.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I know what you're talking about. I mean, I can remember those, back from the 80s, being in school and, seeing all those types of things. So absolutely.
So then a bunch of different versions with like kittens and puppies and that kind of got into the world. Well, what would they, because would unicorns really be out of place in the monsters world? So we came up with the griffin with the wings, kind of this happy gargoyle.
There you go. Yep.
And just when we actually made it, did a little spiral notebook of it, it looked like, oh wow, that's kind of it. And the thought that, Art is kind of a goofy artist. He's a character that he'd have probably just went and bought this thing, like, oh, that reminds me of, the new Pledge, and then just writes their name on it.
Yeah.
So then I went in and kind of channeled my little sister and came up with, stuff that she was doing back when she was a kid, and that's where it came from.
That's awesome, like putting like the little rainbow stickers on there and everything.
Yeah, where he just kind of made it with things that he had.
Yeah, that's cool. So also you had talked about, when you're involved in the process. So when do you receive a portion of the script, or, how do you receive your work once it's, handed over to you?
Well, we get storyboard reels that are put together that have the rough dialogue, like a scratch track, and we can see what's going to be expected, what they're going to be animating to.
Okay.
And we also have kickoff meetings where the director will explain, like, this scene is very important because it shows the emotional arc between these two characters, and this is what we're going for. And so it gives you a real starting point to start designing things. And we can see generally, like if it takes place in like Andy's bedroom, when the toys are realizing he's grown up, they explain that, and it's going to be bittersweet. And one of the ways, so then I go in and start thinking, well, Andy's becoming a teenager, going off to college, so rock and roll posters, sports posters, things that are more edgy than when he was just the hand drawings and the cowboy and Buzz crayon drawings.
Of course, like the Finn McMissile poster up there.
Yeah.
I mean, he's gonna be into those types of things now. Absolutely.
Yeah, and rock and roll and video games, and
yep, that's
kind of the process. And if there's a story point that's very important, some sort of prop, I'm trying to think like a good one, like the adventure book, then if from Up, then we'll go in and spend a lot of time on those and multiple reviews, getting the director's take. And a lot of times we'll do a graphic and we'll think we're dead on, and then they'll see it, real life, and think, oh, maybe that's not exactly the, emotional beat I wanted to hit. So we'll go back and try it again until we get it right.
Yeah, is there, like you said, I guess it depends on the item, how many times you guys are going back and forth between the art department and direction or the other departments to figure out when you get it just right.
Yeah, I mean, sometimes it's like first time.
Sure.
Because you just get in such a, you live with these characters, you live the story, and you kind of take on the emotions of it.
Mm-hmm.
And so when you're drawing, it's just, when it feels right. But sometimes it takes a little longer to figure out.
The other thing that, as you think about the art department and graphics, what people see is, obviously what's in the film, but what you folks are working on is not necessarily just encapsulated within the movies. So, there are some other instances, like we saw that you had worked on Your Friend the Rat, the Golden Book. So chat a little bit more about those experiences and how those come about.
Okay. Well, it's kind of, needs of the studio. The graphic artists here, we kind of take on anything that's given to us that kind of falls into that world. So if there's something that's needed for theme parks, maybe a ride needs a graphic, or a poster that something that that took a lot of graphics is Cars Land.
I was absolutely going to ask about that, so I'm glad you brought it up, because that seems like that would just be, I mean, anybody that's been to Cars Land, I mean, that thing is just plastered head to toe with graphics. Yeah, so chat about that. Like, how was the experience of Cars Land?
Well, the team here, Roger Gould and Liz Gazzano, the theme parks people, go through and, based on things that are in the film, kind of have an idea of what they'd like. The Cozy Cone had a certain number of things in it. The Curio Shop, there's a lot of graphics in Cars to choose from, but they're made for the film. So generally, we don't worry about print quality. We're working at 72 dpi. Things have to have a certain weight to them to be noticeable, and maybe we remove a lot of detail just to focus in on what it. So you see like the Route 66 sign, and might not have a lot of embellishments within the film, but when they reproduce it for the real world, like at Cars Land, we kind of have to plus it out and make it print ready. And
sure, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, add more things to it, like just so it's more interesting when you get up and look at it. There's all the little small print and engravings around things, and so we work a lot on that. Do a lot of special one-offs to refit the models or refit the actual new buildings that they're building in real life, because everything changes.
Yeah, absolutely, of course.
Yeah, especially in the cars, like McQueen's paint job. It's a lot different doing it a model within the computer than wrapping it.
Oh yeah, I wouldn't have thought about that. Yeah,
and keeping him updated. That's kind of the stuff we do.
Sure, that's cool. Is there any, I guess, is there any additional? Does it feel different? I mean, is the process different? Is there more of a open time frame to get those types of things done, like the Your Friend the Rat book or anything like that, as opposed to a film which has a defined schedule, or are those things still all scheduled? And
yeah, it's pretty much all scheduled. Everyone kind of works differently, but for me, I just get a project and I just work on it, and I rely on the kindness of others to keep me on track.
Okay, sure. Sure.
If I think of the big picture, it's a little too overwhelming. Like, it looks like I'll never get all this done, but we've got the teams here are so great. There's always someone like reminding you or keeping you on track. Like, you might want to switch gears a little bit because you're working too long on this, and you've got another thing coming up, and keeps it fresh and just keeps you sane.
Yeah, that's interesting, because I mean, that was one of the questions that I was thinking about as well in talking with you, because I mean, even in my personal life, when the workload gets really heavy, one of the things I was going to ask is, how do you keep a fresh eye on design as well as maintain your creativity? So that's good that you're not necessarily as weighed down with having to worry about the process, and you can just focus in on the craft. Because I myself know that once I get bogged down and I start thinking, like you said, about the whole process too much, my mind doesn't allow me to be as creative and free as I should.
Yeah, definitely. And also, when you have a structured role, it's easy to see what you need to get done. Like on the Your Friend the Rat book, several artists worked on it, but Nate Ragg, who was kind of the production designer of the book, I guess, he gave us our own little areas to work on. So, you deliver your piece and you see it come together as a whole, and it makes it a lot easier as opposed to just looking at like, oh my God, I got to get the book done.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. So we had also seen that you had mentioned in a previous interview about the importance of keep drawing, and you had mentioned earlier with Monsters University being brought in that you were able to start sketching throughout that whole process. Some of the other Pixarians that we've interviewed have expressed that same importance. Like, for instance, Louis Gonzalez from the story team had mentioned keeping up on drawing and sketching and gesture drawing to keep your chops up on your speed and your overall artistic versatility. So how does that also assist you in the art department?
Sketching, all the time, just goofy logos or icons that just pop into your head, even if they're never going to get used. They lead to other things, like just doing funny little drawings of products that might pop into your head. Like one of them I don't think we used it in Monster University, but I was drinking like some sort of sports drink, and I thought, it'd be funny if it was, regurgishake for Monsters World, and just sketch it real fast. And it leads to other things that we can throw into the mix. And then in my free time, being a graphics person, I work on posters. For like my favorite bands, I'll do like a tour poster or book cover just for practice to try to keep up on current styles, checking out what's popular. So it can translate into if something comes up at work where as an example, I need a rock poster in a teen's room. It's not alien to me. I can create it and not have to spend a lot of time like getting the style down right, because I've been practicing at home.
Okay. Yeah, no, I get that. That makes sense. Yeah, I love that. I mean, obviously, the more and more we talk to people within Pixar, the more and more we just get enamored with the support and openness to not only explore those external projects, and they're not viewed as a distraction from work. They're viewed as something that's enhancing not only yourself, but then like you said, you're getting more familiar with other things. So that way, when they come up, you're able to just jump right on it and go, okay, I've done that. That's cool. We can do this.
Yeah.
So that's awesome. So talk a little bit about the software that's used in the art department. Do you use, what you would expect, the Adobe Illustrator, Photoshop, or does the art department have an in-house Pixar developed tool in the way that pitch doctors use in storyboarding or some of the Avid plugins, if you will, for editing?
For me, we all kind of have our own methods of working. There's a lot of people that are fully tactile with real world stuff, gouache, painting.
Okay.
Things like that. For me, I am pretty much completely in the computer, the Adobe Creative Suite. Mm-hmm. I do most of my work in Illustrator. My process is pretty rudimentary. I do rough sketches, just pen and paper.
Yeah.
Take a picture with my iPhone, email it to myself, take it in, and I plus it out.
Sure.
In Illustrator, use Photoshop when I need to for aging, texturing, and then the other work that I do here is motion graphics, and that's all After Effects.
Okay.
So I'll create my assets in Illustrator. I like working in Illustrator just for when I get to the point where I have to make things for any real-world applications, like T-shirts, posters, theme parks. Mm-hmm. It's infinitely scalable. I don't have to worry about resolution,
right,
or up-resing or rebuilding something if I created it in Illustrator or in Photoshop. I can just go get my original assets, and it's a lot more easy to manipulate.
Sure.
Because it's all vector-based.
Right. All right, so then we're down to our last couple questions here. So, and this is more of, where we consider it like a lot of our readers and listeners are in school, they're in the art world and or trying to get into the art world themselves in some way. So let's get to know you a little bit. Describe your journey to Pixar. When did you start? How you got there? All that fun stuff.
Okay. Well, I always drew. And I was heavy into cartoons when I was a little kid, and then the Star Trek reruns, Star Wars, mm-hmm. all the sci-fi fantasy stuff. So I was always drawing something based on that, but I didn't know you could get a job doing it. I didn't realize that existed. So when I was in art school, I just assumed I'd be drawing comic books or something, or when I was in high school. Was lucky enough to get into an art school that had a film department, and I started seeing 2D animation. So I started animating for film, and when I got out of school, that's what I did. I was just working away, in art department for film, and got a job working for an post-production animation house for commercials called Wildbrain in San Francisco. And at that time, Brad Bird was doing The Incredibles. And just every day I'd just say, I'd do anything to work on The Incredibles. I'd do anything to work on The Incredibles because I'm such a fan of Iron Giant.
Sure.
And such a fan of Pixar. Like when I had saw Toy Story, I was, that's what I want to do.
Yeah.
But was actually just kind of too embarrassed or didn't think, there's no way I could get a job there. So I never even thought of applying.
Okay.
It just seemed so unattainable. And one day I was just lucky enough to be at work and the phone rang, and a producer from Wildbrain that had gone to Pixar said, "Were you serious about wanting to work on The Incredibles?" And I was like, "Yeah, why?" "Well, you have to get over here like right now." And
click.
Yeah. So I did, and once I got in, I just kind of like, dug in like a tick, just held on to the desk, and been here ever since.
Wow.
It was very lucky.
Yeah, that sounds like a wild ride, but it's one of those things where, I think a lot of times, artists keep things to themselves. It's cool that you were talking about that and expressing that, so that way once the opportunity came up, somebody knew to make the call. Yeah, and I think it's also really neat, that you shared that story of that you thought it was unattainable, because I think a lot of people feel that way. But the bottom line is, if you work hard, if you concentrate on what your end result goal is, and keep an open mind, it can happen. So I think that's great, and that's something that's definitely going to resonate with our listeners and readers for sure. Finally, I would just say, could you give us an idea of the art department structure? If somebody's thinking about getting into the art department, and you even said, it seems unattainable, somebody still may be thinking it's unattainable. So how many team members are part of that team? And how would somebody navigate their way to the art department of Pixar if that was something they were interested in?
I don't know how big the art department is right now. When I was thinking about the question, I know on Inside Out, the film I'm on right now, it was about 20 people. Right now we're down to about 5 because we're wrapping down on the film.
Okay.
And at the end it'll just be Ralph Eggleston, the production designer, and probably me, just because graphics tend to run out till the end because we have to do the end credits and titles and everything. But the path, there's multiple paths. There's, the internship program, which is outstanding, and it's on the website. You can go and see at the Pixar website, the guidelines to apply for that. A lot of the interns actually go on to working at the company. Trying to think, because my path was it was funny, just talking about it, I was thinking something that my grandfather had told me about preparation and opportunity. And, luck's involved, but you have to also be preparing for that luck. So, like, when I did have the interview at Pixar, I'd been preparing. I'd always thought that if I could get into a place like Pixar, that it would work out just fine because that's what I was working towards. I just wasn't expecting it to happen so fast.
Sure.
And so just that constantly, even if it doesn't seem attainable, working towards it, like just drawing, learning software, doing the tutorials. If you want to do motion graphics, working on After Effects or whatever tool that you want to work on, and just figuring things out, just staying excited about it.
All right, so there you have it. First off, really easygoing guy and super nice to talk to.
Right.
Yeah, and obviously you were lucky enough to be able to chat with him ahead of time.
I was able to chat with him ahead of time just for like a quick minute. Then I had to take care of our son, so...
Right, yeah, it seems to be whenever one of these interviews pops up, he's getting a little bit on edge. But you know what? That's how life goes. You got to roll with the punches.
Yeah, Leo doesn't nap when we have interviews. So.
Right. He doesn't seem to care at this point. Yeah. But either way, so we're obviously thrilled to chat with him for one thing, which was the Dream Journal.
Yes.
Now, that is what we were saying at the top of the podcast. If somebody had known that we had this connection to Craig, that would be it. We didn't know. All of a sudden, we got the email saying, hey, we're going to be chatting with Craig. We were like, oh, that's the guy that created the Dream Journal.
Yes.
And obviously he's done way more than that we talked about in the podcast, but that was the one thing that like we immediately were like, that's hilarious, because if you
follow our website, we recreated the Dream Journal.
Right, from a screenshot in the first trailer for Monsters U that had come out. Right. And we actually we sent a copy to Craig.
Yes.
Just as like a little bit of a tribute, because we saw his name in the Art of book and we said, hey, you know what?
You made this.
You made this, and we loved it. We did it. Just wanted to say thanks. Here's a little thing.
Yeah, we actually had our custom Dream Journal signed by the director of Monsters University, Dan Scanlon, and gave it away on our website.
Right. So yeah, if you haven't been following along, we're going to be doing another contest coming up as well. Just because we haven't done one in a while. Because you never
know what we might give away.
Right, but that was a previous giveaway as well. So, but really cool that he, kind of said that he channeled his little sister and thought about what she used to do to her notebooks using what she had. You have this Trapper Keeper style kind of like cover or a notebook or a folder or whatever.
Oh, and if you are a child of the 80s, you had a Trapper Keeper. I mean, I remember mine. Mine was red, white, and had a big brown Cocker Spaniel on it. I remember, and I don't think I have it still, but I kind of wish I did.
I wish I had mine too. It fell apart. I overused it. Mine was actually in like the early days where it was more of just a flat color, whereas the more popular ones, the design ones cost more. Oh. So I got the straight green one with like the light blue just outline on the side where it says Trapper Keeper down the edge.
Oh, wow. And see, you know what's funny though? Is like my Trapper Keeper had like a brown Cocker Spaniel on it. I don't even like dogs. Even then,
don't turn off our audience. You like dogs. So.
I like dogs, but like even as a kid, I was like, I just wanted it.
Yeah, well, it was
just like a thing.
It was a thing. Everybody had a Trapper Keeper.
I know.
Then you saw it, and it probably had a cute puppy with with puppy eyes on it, and you were like, okay.
I wish it would have had a kitten on it. Now thinking back.
Oh boy, here we go. We're getting deep. So, anyways, I thought that was really cool, and obviously that was a pleasant surprise that we were able to talk to Craig since we connected with the hilarity of the Dream Journal so much. The other thing I thought that was really interesting is some of those external experiences and the timing of those with Your Friend the Rat or what is involved with Cars Land, all the depth and details that are involved with that. How there were so many decals and how some things were different from in the park than they were in the movie just because they have to visually be a little different.
Right, to fit in.
To fit into the world.
To that theme.
Yeah, so I thought that was really interesting. So, of course, thank you again to Craig. Thank you again to Pixar for helping us with Continue the Pipeline series. We're very excited next month to bring you our next series, which is actually going to be, I'll reveal it this time, with the layout department. So we're going to be talking with layout. Very, very cool. We're already writing up questions, and the interview is coming right around the corner. So we're very excited to bring that to you. And we certainly hope that you're enjoying the Pipeline series.
As much as we are.
As much as we are, yeah. And obviously you guys certainly have, because we've been hearing a lot of great feedback from that as well. All right, well, that about wraps up episode 29 of the Pixar Post Podcast. As usual, what I like to say when we close is be sure to follow us on all of our social media channels, and I like that we go through this quickly. Of course, you can follow us on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, Vine, Pinterest, YouTube, Google+. Subscribe to our podcast on iTunes or Stitcher. Dang it, I screwed it up a little bit.
Oh, that was so fast.
Not Micro Machines fast, but fast.
Micro Machines fast. That was a good
That's another
one.
80s reference for you there.
The throwback.
But lastly, if you liked today's show, let us know about it. Rate it on iTunes, leave us a comment on our site, or send us an email at info@pixarpost.com. And be sure to get ready for next month's Pixar Pipeline interview. And, of course, stay tuned to pixarpost.com all week for the latest Pixar news. Signing off as usual, I'm TJ.
And I'm Julie.
And we'll talk to you next time. Bye-bye.